All right, we're going to talk about Ernest Holmes again. I did a video the other night about Ernest Holmes. He was one of the great New Thought thinkers. He wrote a book called The Science of Mind, which is considered to be a classic. And I thought I would compare it with A Course in Miracles. A lot of his ideas definitely are in the same realm as A Course in Miracles. You might even think that Course in Miracles might have even borrowed from Ernest Holmes, and for all we know, maybe that was the case. But I don't think Jesus in A Course in Miracles borrowed from anything in the sense of like stealing or taking. It was more maybe using similar terminology, but really making something new and unique. And that's speculative anyway. You know, who really knows what was going on? But one thing I want to point out in this video is that Holmes uses the word sonship, and I asked ChatGPT about this word sonship because I thought that the word sonship was unique to the Course, and that Jesus in A Course in Miracles actually came up with the term sonship. But the reality is that the Course uses the word sonship in its own unique way, but the word sonship has been around for a very long time, which I was not aware of, but now I am. It's actually like a Christological term, theological term that has been used in Christian circles for centuries. Obviously, it's not in English. It probably was first in another language, maybe Greek, maybe Latin. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask ChatGPT about that. But let's talk about some of the quotes. We'll read some of the quotes from Holmes about different things and compare them to the Course. And my point in the first video is that Ernest Holmes is very similar. His ideas and so on are very similar to the Course, but they're not the Course, and they are not exactly the same, and they actually differ in very important ways. So you can't really lump them together. You can't say that the Course in Miracles is the same as Ernest Holmes, or Ernest Holmes is the same as the Course. You can't say that Christian Science is the same as the Course. You know, these are unique systems, and I don't think you can even say that A Course in Miracles is New Thought or New Age. You definitely can't say it's New Age. People say it's a New Age writing. It's not a New Age writing. Is it a New Thought writing? I don't think it's a New Thought writing either. But Ernest Holmes is put in that category of New Thought. And then we'd have to define what New Thought is exactly. Maybe I can ask at the end. I can ask ChatGPT. But anyway, what does Ernest Holmes say about the nature of God? So here's Holmes's one of Holmes's quotes. God is mind, spirit, the creative energy of the universe, the infinite that is at the center of everything. ACIM, God is but love, and therefore so am I. That's a very familiar one for Course students. That's in the workbook, found many times. God is not symbolic, he is fact. That is in the text, chapter 11 of the text. Parallel, both present God as infinite spirit / love, not an anthropomorphic being. So that's important. They both say that God is not an anthropomorphic being. God is more like spirit, love. But difference, Holmes uses metaphysical language like mind, creative principle. ACIM stresses God's formless love. The God that God, which is love, is formless, does not have a body. You can't even conceive of what God is. And using words like mind or creative principle, they could be helpful, but they're not. They only point in that direction. Nature of the world. Holmes says the universe is the body of God. It is real, but transient, the changing garment of the eternal. Now, keep in mind that ChatGPT and AI in general has been known to fudge quotes, to make up quotes. Some people say hallucinate. Now, is this a real quote? I don't know. But then it says ACIM The world you see is an illusion of a world. God did not create it, for what he creates must be eternal. That is a quote from the Course. So I'm assuming that the quote from Holmes is probably correct too. So let's read it again. The universe is the body of God. It is real, but transient, the changing garment of the eternal. That's Holmes. So he gives reality to the world. He doesn't say it's a complete illusion. ACIM says the world you see is an illusion of a world. God did not create it, for what he creates must be eternal. Parallel, both deny that appearances are ultimate reality. Difference, Holmes sees the universe as a real manifestation of spirit. ACIM denies the entire cosmos as God's creation. Now, you could say on the surface that is a big difference, right? But it might be more semantics ultimately, because remember that Jesus' course has a pedagogical purpose to it. And what would Jesus' pedagogical purpose in saying the world is a complete illusion be, right? Because Jesus could say, well, ultimately the world is part of God, because nothing can exist apart from God. So how can you say the world is not part of God, right? That wouldn't make sense either. But the pedagogical reason is to say, don't take illusion seriously at all, right? This world is an illusion. Don't give it reality, right? And if you give it reality, you will suffer, and you will feel the consequences of that choice to make it real in your mind. But let's go on. We could talk more. We could talk days on end about that. But the power of mind, Holmes, change your thinking and change your life. Thought is creative, and what we think, we experience. That sounds like the law of attraction, or maybe a step above the law of attraction. But ACIM says, I see only the past. Projection makes perception. So parallel, both affirm that mind projects or creates experience. The difference, Holmes emphasizes deliberate affirmative thinking. ACIM emphasizes undoing false thought and letting spirit guide. Yeah, and that is a big difference between the Course and a lot of these new thought systems, and a lot of these, like the law of attraction. They emphasize the positive affirmation of things, which tends to get egoic, whereas the Course is all about undoing the illusionary thinking. And in undoing the illusionary thinking, you get back to what is real, right? Your true self. Healing, Holmes. Healing is not creating a perfect body. It is revealing the perfect body which already exists in spirit. That's very similar to the Course, except the Course would not use the word body. Course says healing is accomplished the instant the sufferer no longer sees any value in pain. Sickness is a defense against the truth. Parallel, both deny sickness as ultimate reality and see healing as a shift in mind. Difference, Holmes frames healing as aligning with the divine perfection already present. ACIM frames it as undoing the illusion of sickness. That also might be semantics. They're very, very similar. Yeah, but definitely different language, different ways of putting it, and that's not a small thing. Semantics, it's easy to say semantics, but words are powerful, right? And so if you put something a certain way, it can have a certain impact that putting it another way might not have. Sin and evil. Holmes says evil is not an entity, thing, or person. It is simply a misuse of the law of life. There is no cosmic devil. ACIM, sin is but error in a special form the ego venerates. The Son of God is guiltless, and in his innocence is his salvation. Parallel, both deny evil as an independent force. Difference, Holmes still treats evil and suffering as real effects of wrong thought. ACIM goes further. Sin, guilt, and evil are illusions with no reality whatsoever. That's also, I think, could be semantics, because in this world it does appear that sin and evil are real, are realities, right? They seem to be. So it could be helpful to not deny that they seem to be real, right? And I think the Course makes that statement as well, that not to deny the reality of the appearance, but also to deny the reality of the appearance, because the appearance is just an appearance. But ultimately, you can't deny what you're feeling. For example, right? If you're feeling mad, you're feeling angry, you're feeling upset, you're feeling whatever, you can't just deny that. You can't just say that doesn't exist, right? That's not helpful. You have to accept that it's there, and then take Jesus's hand, so to speak, and practice the Course, and then you will start to see that your anger is not justified, your upset is not justified ultimately. Holmes says Jesus was the great example, not the great exception. He revealed the divinity of man. It's very similar to the Course. ACIM says, there's nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The difference between us now is that I have nothing else. Parallel both sees Jesus as a model of realized divinity. Holmes frames Jesus within the metaphysical laws of science of mind. ACIM positions Jesus as the voice of the Course, actively guiding students. That is quite a difference, right? That Jesus is like really very important for the Course, because Jesus is giving the Course. Path to transformation, Holmes' tool: affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, goal alignment with creative principle, demonstration of abundance, health, and harmony. ACIM tool: forgiveness, releasing judgment, listening to the Holy Spirit. Goal: awakening from the dream of separation, return to knowledge of God. Parallel, both are practical disciplines, not just philosophy, so they both are putting into practice the theory. Difference: Holmes emphasizes active thought conditioning, ACIM emphasizes undoing the ego. Again, there is semantics here, because in a way they're getting at the same thing, getting at it with different words, different different symbols. As one person said, it's the dance of symbols, right? The symbol dance. So in summary, Holmes is a constructive metaphysician, while ACIM is a radical illusionist. Both share the same root intuition: mind shapes experience, God is love, healing comes through shifting thought. Very similar, with significant differences, but are they deal breakers? Ultimately not. And then I asked ChatGPT about sonship. Now, the word sonship was originally used, I'll try to put this all in the description. The word sonship was originally used to talk about how Jesus was the full Son of God, whereas everyone else is an adoptive son. This is Paul's language. You find this in the letters of Paul, that everyone else is an adopted son of God, right? Which kind of gives everyone else second-class status in a way. And Holmes and ACIM kind of flip that, right? Where they basically, like ACIM says, the sonship is everyone. Everyone is equal part of the sonship. There's no one special. No one is like the only begotten son, like Jesus is the only begotten son. Everyone else is an adopted son. No, everyone is an equal part of the sonship, and the sonship is more than the sum of all of its parts, but includes all of its parts in equality. Early Christianity and biblical tradition used it first. It goes all the way back to Origen. And remember that the Bill Thetford was supposed to be the reincarnation of Origen. apparently that's something that Helen told Bill, or Jesus told Helen to tell Bill. I forget how that came about. Ernest Holmes also used it in the 1920s. Course in Miracles uses the term many times. Actually, in the text, it uses sonship 98 times, and it uses it only once in the workbook, or in the manual. It uses it once. The earliest Christian usage of sonship was highly Christological, meant to draw a sharp line between Jesus' unique divine status and everyone else's adoptive participation in God's family. Holmes and ACIM both flip this on its head, but in different ways.